All right, we'll open the meeting with any public comments. Okay, seeing none. I have a public comment for this one. Last fall, I told you about my aunt, who is a prairie restoration specialist in Wisconsin, and she gave me a trick on how to do native planting. Is at the end of the growing season, cut your grass as low as possible, blade all the way down to zero, so you're basically like cutting dirt. So that the grass is cut down to like the stalks, and then reseed it with native prairie and wildflower seeds at the last snow. So that's what I did. I went to American Meadows,
cool.
and I got a pound of native wildflower and prairie seeds. And I sprinkled it on the last snow just as it was melting, and that just kind of like helped to settle in the seeds and fill in all the gaps and stuff. And yeah, so I did that last weekend. I'm very excited to report out. Because I read the package and it said like do all the work that I didn't want to do. You know, it was like pull out your grass, de-weed, rototill, and then like keep guard over the seeds to make sure the birds don't eat it. You know, that's like I'm not doing any of that. But can I walk around on the last snow and sprinkle? Absolutely.
Nice.
I definitely screwed up my lawnmower several times, cutting it at
Yeah.
zero.
Hit some rocks.
It hit some rocks. I'm gonna have some sharpening, maybe a new fan belt, but like, we're gonna see if it works.
Worth it.
Yeah,
Possibly.
yeah, definitely.
Keep us informed of how it comes up.
I will.
That's the key.
I will. Definitely not the rototill process that I did not want to do, so very excited. Okay, that's my public comment.
I think I have one too, if there's
Yeah, go for it.
no others. Chapin was gonna try to join in and bring something up, and I told him that if he texted it to me, I would read it for him. It says for public comment, there are 3 8th grade challenge students that he's advising. They want to do something hands-on for water quality in Allenbrook. He's in conversation with Principal Greg Marino on ideas, but they haven't settled on anything yet. If the Conservation Commission has any ideas to share, it might help them get a direction. There's in addition, there's an entire house, 4 classes, 7th and 8th grade students at WCS that want to do a project this spring. They're especially interested in doing something in May, which is challenging because it's too early to do like stump treatment and invasive removal. And it's not the right time of year to do a lot of transplanting and stuff. So they're just struggling a little bit to figure out what to do. So an entire house of 7th and 8th grade students and 3 8th grade challenges interested in doing work around Williston and Allenbrook.
So Reed, do you know in their science capabilities in these classrooms, like could they do pH or conductivity or, some simple assessment of water quality?
My son's in 8th grade, and that doesn't sound like anything that they
Oh,
do.
I was gonna say,
We could ask the science
well, so
teacher.
Chapin would be supervising
Yeah.
and giving instruction, so I don't know about materials for like the entire house to do something like that, probably not, but the 3 8th grade students, they could maybe do some
I mean,
basic
it
testing.
could be something with particulate matter too, where you just grab a gallon of water and filter it through and then
See what you
somehow,
get.
yeah,
Yeah.
see what you get, just to
Do some visual
measure.
observations.
Measure relationships between volume of water and particulate erosion kind of estimates and stuff.
Oh, yeah. That's
I'm sure
interesting.
Eric's got some much better ideas, but
Yeah,
he isn't here.
I can ask Eric at the end of the meeting, if he has ideas as well. No need to answer right in this moment, it's helpful, Gary, but if anything comes to mind.
It'd be neat for them to generate some data just to see it and start to realize how science works.
Yeah, as part of is it the MS4 permit, or what's the one, the MS2 for the school districts, anyway, whatever, it's part of their stormwater permitting process. They're gonna have to make some upgrades. It's not the right moment, I don't think, to do any projects related to that, he was saying, but one of the things that had been pitched to Greg Marino was could the school own and operate a automated or semi-automated monitoring station? Have the data streaming in the school where the kids can see right out back in Allenbrook, what are the levels right now and stuff, and it was too big It seemed too big, an undertaking at the time when they were thinking about which projects they
Yeah,
wanted
and then
to.
the problem with those is that once school gets out banged,
Right, then what
nobody's
happens
gonna
and-
be helping with anything.
Yeah, so there was, it didn't quite happen, but I just wanted to bring up that it was discussed, that I was in a meeting with Greg Marino about it to pitch it, and then he was like, that sounds really cool, and I don't think we can do it. Just too much to take on, so. Yes, bring ideas, and you can send them to me, you can send them to Jake, and I'll get them to him if you send them to me.
Great,
I have one quick thing.
yeah. Well,
Scouts, the scouts asked me to talk to them in the armory at the end of the month about. For a merit badge, they needed to pick a topic and, something about town government and then pick the ERF and the Williston Conservation Commission, so I'm gonna talk to them about that when they get to,
Go Scouts.
yeah. And then they're gonna ask me questions about it,
Cool.
just thought I'd let you know.
That's awesome. Nice.
Or I have a Excel file that has like ERF expenditures over the last, since 1990 or whenever it started. Would that be helpful at all, or?
Sure.
Maybe not
Why
yet,
not?
I don't know, but let me know if you
Yes,
want it, and
okay,
I'll
yeah.
email it to you.
Okay, all right,
Well, and we have a website.
that's true, we have a
Yeah.
website.
It doesn't have all the data, that's individual data, but it's got the summary.
And there's a nice PowerPoint presentations on the website that show that some neat projects that have been done.
Oh, yeah.
Too.
Yeah, well, I think Wild Williston's page,
Yeah.
includes the slide deck that Simon presented.
Oh,
in
yeah,
2023. So, has a lot of examples of.
Mhm.
Kind of the value or the unique opportunities that the ERF presents.
Thanks.
All right, so now we will open up the minutes. And if possible, we would usually then share the minutes on the screen for folks to either read along or.
Yeah, that sounds good. Just give me a.
They're not too long this time around, which
So,
makes it possible to actually
yeah,
read them
I
together.
keep the new note taker. It's getting pretty abbreviated.
Is that the AI, is that how we're doing that now?
No, we have a person under contract.
And they just listen to the recording? Or
She
something?
takes it off the
Oh.
recording, so Darby Mayville, I think you've seen the name on some of them, and she's gonna do this one, and then after that, Dave will be doing them, so.
Okay.
All right, so this is March 19th.
Yes. That's pretty cool. It even gives the little link to the YouTube recording right at the top of the minutes now.
Mhm.
Okay, here
Oh,
are minutes.
yeah.
Like that, we can do
I
that.
never noticed that. I am.
So I can go back in here.
I hate watching myself on recording.
I was showing Dave the YouTube channel yesterday, and we have like almost 300 meeting videos
Oh,
on
yeah.
there now. It's
For
like
sure.
really,
Yeah.
Do you have to pay for that?
no, I'm sure at some point
Yeah.
we'll get a notice that we've got so many on there that we need to, or
Yeah,
something, and then we'll start deleting them off the back end. We don't have to keep meeting videos published for very long according to state law. It's
It's
a
6 months probably.
yeah, it's like 6 months or a year. I think it might even just be 6 months. It's like really the written minutes are the required public records, so.
All
There
right,
you
can everyone
go.
see that?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, so we'll just kind of slowly scroll through if anyone had any edits. When I read this last night, I did not see any edits. So I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good too. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Scroll down for sake of completion.
Yeah.
You're a fast reader.
Always good.
Did anybody second that? I will.
Yeah, we need a second.
Okay.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, is that Eric?
It's there.
Great, Eric, you're here just in time to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve, wow.
Yeah.
You okay sitting in a different spot? I don't know.
I'll get over it.
Yeah.
Hi, Dave.
Nice to meet you,
Nice to meet
Dave.
you.
Eric Howe.
Dave Maroon.
Alright, so we-
Pass in my day, for my day job at some point, but. Nice to meet you.
motion to approve the minutes, all in favor, aye. No opposed. Minutes are approved. And the next major item on the agenda is to chat informally with our new conservation planner, David Maroney. And for the record and AI, my name is Dave Westman and I'm the chair. And maybe that's how we should start, is we should just go around the room with introductions. And then maybe hear a little bit from Dave, so why don't we do something basic like years on the commission and years in Williston. So I've been on the commission now for 2 years and I've been in Williston for going on 10 years now. Why don't we start there?
Eric Howe, I've lived in Williston for 17-ish years and been on the commission for about 15.
I'm Reed Carr. I met David yesterday, so he knows a bit about me. I've been in Williston 31 of my 37 years on this planet. And I've been on the commission for 5 years.
Gary Holly, I've lived in Williston for, I guess now 36 years.
You got me.
Yeah. And I've been on the commission around 30, I think, give or take a year or two.
That's great.
Yeah, Laura Meyer, hi Dave.
Hey,
Dave and I have known each other for a while. And I have been on the commission 5 years and lived in Williston 34 years, so you.
Wow. Oh,
You actually coached
came
my
about the
kids in
same-
Little League.
Yeah, I remember that a long time ago, yeah.
We have some tremendous tenure.
yeah.
We've lost a couple people in recent years, but
Fantastic.
like Jude and
Carl.
Carl have been on for decades,
Yeah.
along with Gary. So at one point we had like 3 people who had decades of experience.
Yeah, that's
Pretty
amazing.
satisfying committee to be on, I think, I mean, it's,
Yeah,
you feel like you get things done and you're doing the right thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
a lot of towns would love to have this kind of community and longevity, so that's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Dave, do you wanna
Yeah.
give us a little background on where you're from and what brought you to conservation planning in Williston?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you all for welcoming me. My name is David Maroney. I go by Dave. Please feel free to call me Dave. I actually met Laura back in 2021 through the Burlington VMN. That was shortly after I moved to Vermont, and then I'm local, so I moved to Williston with my wife about 2.5 years ago. We're down the street in the Sunrise Drive neighborhood. And we just had our first child, so I had a 2-month-old at home, so just a little bit about me. Thank you. So a lot of life change at this moment, but I'm really excited to be here. I have been in the conservation planning sphere or adjacent to it in the last 2 years through my work with Fish and Wildlife. At the state level, working very closely with Jens Hilka, the Community Wildlife Program. So that was sort of in many ways, my introduction to working with conservation commissions and getting a sense for what the differences are like across the state in our municipalities and towns that have commissions that don't, and all of the different flavors and variation between. So it's really exciting to be getting involved now in my local municipality where I can just get to appreciate the specific community that we have here and the amazing resources. And also to finally apply myself to many of the challenges that I've been able to get involved with on a more abstract or large level scale, but now get into the thick of it and help to support you all in making important decisions in the community. I've done a lot of work with some conservation commissions recently down in the Mad River Valley, supporting the Tri-Town Commission based in Waitsfield and Warren with their knotweed removal project that they've been going on, I think 5 or 6 years there. So I was supporting them with GIS mapping services and consulting ecology and helping them manage all the different partners that are involved in that project. And I also recently completed a master's degree at the University of Vermont in the field naturalist program. where my focus was working out in Stowe very closely with the Stowe Land Trust on a parcel called Adams Camp, which is under the Trapp Family Lodge ownership.
Yeah.
But it's a publicly conserved 500-acre parcel with a lot of different stakeholders, not too dissimilar from the big mix of stakeholders we have here at the Catamount Community Forest. And that project was really focused on balancing the interests of the different stakeholders there, particularly trying to understand the landscape around recreation versus wildlife protections and making space for the sugaring operation there and the sustainable firewood harvest that goes on and all of the different interests, kind of balancing that out. So that was a project that I worked on for about a year there, and I led the ecological assessment and worked with all the stakeholders to work on updating their management plan and assessing all the different trails throughout the entirety of Stowe, which is quite a few. So
Yeah.
that kind of brings me, that kind of rounds out the experience I have that really intersects with this field specifically in conservation planning. Prior to that, I was in teaching. I was a science teacher for about 5 years down in New York City, where I taught AP biology, which was a lot of fun, but I was eager to get outside a little bit more and really apply myself to the landscape and also expand my ecology background a little.
Where were you teaching? Is that Bronx?
I was teaching at a place called the Brearley School on the Upper East Side of Manhattan.
Okay. Is that private?
It's
It
private.
sounds private.
Yeah, it's K through 12 girls' school
Okay,
there, so
cool.
A little different than living around here. Huh?
really different. Really different.
We spent 5 years in Manhattan and then 5 years in Westchester County, so,
Okay,
yeah. We wanted out too.
yeah.
It's a perfectly reasonable
Yeah.
reaction to living there.
I mean, there are a lot of things to appreciate, but there's a lot of things to appreciate about living here that I'm
Yeah,
very grateful to enjoy at this present time, especially for raising a kid.
absolutely. Well, one of the things that I noticed when I came into the commission 2 years ago is that there's not just a lot of roots in Williston, but expertise around the table. You know, Eric works at the Champlain Water, I always get the name wrong. Lake Champlain Water Trust.
Champlain Basin Program.
Oh, great, okay. Yeah. Cross paths.
And Gary's a forestry professor at UVM, or retired now.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, I'm still working a little bit on that certain project. but
and Kim Coleman, I believe is her last
Yeah.
name. Yeah, Kim is a commissioner. She's coming back. She's working on a project right now in the Pacific Northwest that she has a very prestigious grant to work on, and she's a forester as well. So there's a lot of expertise, and Laura, obviously, Matt from a master naturalist. I don't know if that was your professional job though.
No, I was a professor for a few years after I got my doctoral degree.
So there you go. A lot of expertise at this table. And I'm an energy wonk coming back to conservation because I do energy for my day job, and I did not want to do the Williston Energy Committee as a result of that. I spend 8 to 12 hours.
Sure.
Yeah.
You don't want a 13th hour?
No, I spend 8 to 12 hours a day working on energy already. I don't need that. And I used to be an organizer with the Sierra Club
Oh, great.
and working on wilderness in California. So it's really fun for me to be back in conservation and thinking about that. So there's a lot of expertise here. It's pretty cool, pretty unique. I don't think you get this kind of expertise on other volunteer committees, which is super fun.
Yeah,
Anything else we want to jump into as by way of introduction?
Reed's a part of Sustainable Williston also, and
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
I don't think I could answer what my expertise is, so. I'm a generalist.
Passion, I
Very
think.
passionate.
Yeah, I would say
Comment,
Reed,
perhaps.
yeah, Reed leads the passion around the group, that's for sure. It's great. I don't think Reed sleeps either.
No, not usually.
Yeah.
I've been wondering that myself.
So we had a very, speaking of projects, we had a very active winter of both proposing a budget for our environmental reserve fund and having that budget be rejected by the select board because of the budget constraints that are happening all over the state and a very tight town meeting day proposal. And so for all of those reasons, we were looking at a goose egg for budget when we know that there's rising costs and that the need for conserving the public land was not going away. We also at least got a little bit of a heads up in 2024 that some parcels may be coming up for potential sale in the future. And so we did not want to accept a zero budget. And so when we worked with the select board on what ultimately our options are, they expressed an interest in putting the tax rate out for a vote. And their initial suggestion was a penny. I think a penny would have raised something like 200,000 a year. We were only asking for 150. We didn't want to be seen as greedy. Yeah, we didn't want to be seen as greedy. So we had a very specific conversation at this table about how much we should ask for. And so our initial ask was 150. We ended up asking for about 100 with what we decided to be a very reasonable and prudent half penny on the tax rate. And I think that was a fun and important project for us as a group to work on. It was a little bit of advocacy, which I know made Matt a little uncomfortable. But it was at the request of the select board who all appointed us, so the select board wanted this as an initiative and as a ballot initiative that I think to sort of see how it would go. And at the end of the day, we did letters to the editor. I did an interview with the town paper. We got a very good story out of the Williston Observer for it. And Laura kicked off a great letter to the editor drive, followed by Gary, and then we had a front porch forum posts, I think by all of us, and we got the word out, and it was very cool. We got 75% of the vote to approve that, if I'm not mistaken. And so it's pretty remarkable and definitive result for what was a modest budget request. And so I think that's like a important project that this group just completed. And also a sort of signal of like, okay, we asked for this, now we have to come up with a plan. And so that's kind of what Reed and I were talking about in the debrief at Goodwater Brewing a couple weeks ago, was what are we gonna do with this now? You know, we have to have a plan. Do we identify parcels? Do we do any active outreach? And I know we're gonna talk about what our priorities are, but in agenda item number 6, but it's also by way of introductions and sort of like what this committee really was able to focus on. And I don't know, do you have any thoughts, or have you worked with ERF funding mechanisms in the past? Like, what's your sort of general thoughts on like when you heard that Williston has an ERF?
Well, first off, yeah, thank you so much it's great to have a sense of a recent background and both the challenges and success that has occupied a lot of your time and effort. I haven't worked with an ERF specifically in the past, so it's definitely a new area for me in terms of thinking about how best to apply this. But I think, I was talking with Reed yesterday about prioritization and just the importance of having, and now that funding is on the table, potentially revisiting that plan that was done in 2020 to make sure that it's kind of as updated and as accurate and as sophisticated as it can be, so that you have, now that you have the funding in place, you really have the story in place that you can take to landowners and you can take to the community in terms of communicating, what our best, where we can maximize our our conservation benefits with the funding that we have. And my other thought is simply just, when it comes to using this great resource, right, the community has to be on board. And so I think it's excellent to hear that you're also engaged in that community outreach component. I mean, the outreach to the observer and communicating with people on front porch forum. I've often found that just in my engagement with a lot of conservation commissions in my work with the state, that is the piece that a lot of conservation commissions need the most sort of coaching on. Because if that's missing, then the conservation commission is just sort of a disembodied government committee. And people don't necessarily understand what they're doing for the community. So I think you really have an edge in that respect. And I'd say let's shore up the prioritization, make sure that that's kind of clear. And then from there, we're just playing the game of, opportunity versus our priorities. You can have the best prioritization in the world, and then, the opportunity leads you well down that list. And that's just the way it goes. There's a certain element of luck in there, but with, a really clear understanding of the landscape, which I think it sounds like just from talking to you that you've got a great start on that. Even the work you did in 2020 is probably still, largely applicable and accurate. Even if there might be some things we can look at or tweak or modify, but that's kind of my initial thoughts on that.
Yeah, Jens helped us also. He came and helped us with the prioritization on the map.
Oh, great.
Yeah, where corridors were and where the high priority parcel should be.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember in the 2020 prioritization, like the weightings that we did for different factors. I'm trying to remember. I don't think SWHA mapping for the parcel was considered, but some of the factors that go into SWHA evaluation are also factors in the prioritization. So there's like this weird overlap where it's not a 1-for-1. But now that our SWHA is more reflective of the actual situation on the ground, perhaps we should be leaning more heavily on whether it is or is not mapped as tier 1, for instance, versus tier 2 and crossings and their tiers as well. We may actually be able to simplify our prioritization method and just say, well, it's these other factors plus what's taken into account by SWHA.
Do you have much experience working with applicants for projects? That my rough observation of 2 years here is that half the job is having these kinds of open conversations about like what does the future of conservation look like in Williston, and then the other half of the job is reviewing applicants who are, and when you mentioned SWHAs, that's what triggered it for me. Was that's half of what we do is people coming in and saying they want to build a new house, they want to do a subdivision. That subdivision can be like a half an acre in the woods, or it can be dozens and dozens of acres in the farm field over on the Glazer property, and we're reviewing it for significant wildlife habitat impacts, making recommendations for like how to mitigate that, navigating the bylaws, which are sometimes very black and white and sometimes very gray. And every project seems to sort of trigger one aspect of it or another. So have you worked with those types of projects before, and any thoughts on how this committee should be navigating it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So this role is really bringing me into a much more specific applied realm for working with applications and stuff. In my work with the state, it was really a much higher level and a lot of support, education, coaching of folks who are going to be on conservation commissions or are on conservation commissions in terms of understanding all of the different options and what goes into creating those kind of mechanisms. So this job is, I'm looking forward to that opportunity to be really brought into this process of getting to review directly. But I think Williston already has a pretty sophisticated, set of standards. Certainly in comparison to a lot of other towns that have less resources and expertise to devote to these issues. So I think there's a pretty pretty good history and a lot of experience for me to lean on in terms of jumping into this work as well. And I think that there certainly, maybe opportunities as we reflect on kind of the priorities and what the different tiers of protection might look like. But yeah, that's kind of my initial thoughts on that.
I want to just mention that, in our interview process, we showed our applicants, the Benedetto project. On Butternut Road as one of our examples of
It's the horse farm.
the horse
right?
farm one, yeah, so how Williston has these very stringent open space requirements, here's a threshold project that's just barely. Over the acreage requirement to do the separate parcel of open space and. How Williston's rules take, a pretty conventional. Large lot rural subdivision layout and really demand something quite different, and it's very dramatic when you. When you apply that to a 100-acre parcel, it's like, oh yeah, here's the open space, here's the cluster
Yeah.
development. When you apply it to a 10.6 acre parcel, you're really pushing it, and I think,
Especially since the original estimate was that it was under 10.
Yeah.
right,
So,
right,
like,
so
yeah.
pre-survey, post-survey.
Regard, yeah.
So Dave and I have talked a little bit about the way the town has evolved, both in terms of taking on the responsibility for habitat disturbance assessments, requiring applicants to fund them, but we're the person contracting the consultant on that. Trying to front load that process into the development review and really not make it an after the fact. Well, I guess since you decided to put the houses here, here's what's left of the travel corridor, et cetera. And I think there's work to be done there. Some of it is literally just hand-holding and relationship building with applicants and homeowners who we think are interested in subdividing, maybe getting out and doing some proactive landowner education or outreach of like, hey, rural landowners, come learn about what it's like if you start to have to make some decisions and what your options are. And that's both for ERF and for understanding Williston's development rules.
Yeah, if you're not gonna go the conservation route, what is it likely to look
Right,
like?
what's it gonna look like if you subdivide? And I think some good, well-informed, vigorous staffing of both of those things is gonna serve the town well in the coming years. And yeah, getting proactive about, literally start looking at your priority parcels and what ones have been owned by the same person for a long time. Where maybe there's a transition in the future, and going out and talking to those folks, saying, hey, the town is, proactively accumulating funds, trying to achieve these conservation outcomes. I mean, I worked for this guy on Cape Cod who ran a bunch of land trust services, and we'd be driving around and suddenly he would just pull into a driveway to go, I haven't talked to this guy in a while. He owns some acreage. I just want to make sure he knows we're still here and, still interested in his land, and that can just go a long way. So I'm really excited to have Dave here and to be able to start to establish that. But I think also the development review really benefits from some focused staffing, and it starts with that first meeting with the applicant who comes in and says, yeah, I'm thinking about subdividing, and say, okay, here's some things you're gonna want to consider. And yeah, when we say open space is a separate parcel and development is clustered, we really mean it. You're really gonna have to do that. And that, I think that is something we're really well positioned to do, with the staff position filled back out and with Dave's past experience.
Yeah, that's great.
Thrilled for that. I have to go run a kid to school. I'll be back in about half an hour, so
Sounds good.
Familiar with that
you
experience.
guys are in good hands, and I'll be back.
Well, before you go, I want to just sing your praises because I do want to say that.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, no, coming in and reading these staff memos that you have helped, curate and train them on clearly. They're great.
Yeah.
Like, these staff memos are very complete. They hit all of the bylaws that we are supposed to consider. And, you get your packet as a volunteer committee member and you read your packet the night before. And it's like, okay, I know what I'm about to get into tomorrow morning. And and that's kind of it's both praise for you and your team, and also like a request for Dave is that like, we're reading these packets. We're looking to those staff memos, like, okay, what is the black and white issue here? What is the gray area? What is the committee being asked to decide? And the clearer that those memos can be as far as like, what is the big question about this
Mhm.
development? Those are the helpful guidance, and that's what makes for a better discussion in the morning, for sure.
Definitely. I appreciate hearing that. It's, you know, what we really strive for is to take that 320-page zoning bylaw, and whether it's you or the DRB, to be able to say, okay, we've recited the 95% of this that's in alignment with the bylaw. You know, if anybody has a question about that, that's all of record. Here's the 5% you really need to talk about today.
Yeah.
Here, like you said, here's the big question,
Yeah.
and provide the framework where the group can focus on that. And again, it also helps to communicate back to the applicant, you know, this is the linchpin issue for your application. And sometimes it's, you know, it can be hard news for an applicant who's just like, well, I always figured I would just chop it up this way and sell people 2-acre lots. And you go, no, you know, and we actually talked about in that particular open space case, eventually adding a stronger statement of intent to the bylaw chapter that says, we understand that this pushes people into a development pattern that is different from the one that was traditionally applied in Williston. And we understand this means you would be going out, you know, your realtor's gonna look at you like you're nuts and say, what do you mean you're gonna try to sell somebody a 1/2-acre lot in rural Williston, surrounded by open space that they might not own? Yep, it's 2025. So we're doing it that way instead of the way we did it in 1974, you know, and so it goes. So,
And you're not gonna get a separate quarter mile driveway.
right, we're serious about consolidating access and
Yeah.
limiting impact that way. We're serious about staying away from steep slopes. We're serious about not cutting through wetlands if we can help it, that kind of stuff. So I hope we continue to use that. We will continue to use that framework. I hope we continue to refine it. And as we all have, you know, experience with it, keep that going. So,
Cool.
All right, I'll be back. You guys are in
Thanks,
good
man.
hands.
All right.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think that example Matt was talking about is, it's a good example of, you know, if you look at the difference between the original proposal and the
Yeah.
modifications, it's really just conservation planning 101. We're not gonna put the lots in the middle of the open space. You're gonna shrink the driveways, put them close to the road, cluster the development, and make as big a contiguous open space as possible that, you know, checks all the boxes in terms of wetland protection buffers and you know, important contiguous forested habitat.
Current forest cover, because
Yeah.
it takes a long time to get it back.
Yeah.
I worked, one of my primary roles working with Jens was to be essentially a spokesperson or interpreter for Vermont conservation design for folks. And it's very interesting to me just to understand that what feels like conservation planning 101 or kind of things that seem obvious, really, as Matt was saying, are, you know, very different from the traditional planning method, and a lot of people are still unfamiliar with that way of thinking. And so a lot of my work with Fish and Wildlife really ended up being, you know, just outreach and education on trying to get these concepts through to people who found them very new, which was really gratifying. But it did mean that I didn't get as many of these opportunities to really dive into the specific situations outside of advising, you know, towns on some of their pressing issues. So it's going to be great to address many of these things head on.
It's very hands-on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say that. You guys, you as staff will work with these applicants.
Many more hours than we do.
Many more hours than we do. I mean,
Yeah.
we will read these the night before and come into the discussion in the morning and expecting, you know, to make that final decision in the morning. Easily, you know, not even a quarter of the amount of time that you're gonna spend just writing that memo. You know? And so, yeah, it's a lot of work, but I think it's really appreciated by us as a commission and as people who are asked to make votes on our neighbors' decisions, you know, the clearer, the more comprehensive those memos, the easier and better our job is.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's really helpful to know and understand that aspect of my role. I think the other thing I'd say just in this section is, I think, kind of as Matt alluded to, I really see my role in many ways as building relationships and being a person who can hold a lot of relationships with different people in the community. And that goes for private landowners, and it also goes for all of the different stakeholders in our conserved land here in town. So that's gonna be a lot of what I'm doing, just as I'm getting on board in these next months. And I would love to extend the offer to each of you. I'd love to, go on a walk with you, take me to your favorite spot in Williston. And let's get to know each other a little bit more and kind of what excites you about this work and share something with me about your experience here in Williston and working to protect this land and
Cool.
so, yeah, love to spend a little more time with each of you.
You run?
Sounds great.
I have
Taking
run.
on a trail.
Right.
I've run before, I think.
Not sure how conversation might be, but I'm game for it. I'm game
No,
for it.
because you got a cool little spot.
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds, hey, if
Got my
that is
favorite
your secret sauce, let's go for a trail run.
Maybe
That
a jog.
Yeah,
That sounds great. That sounds
maybe a
great.
jog, maybe a jog. All right. Anything else for intros? We're gonna have more in a minute on work plan priorities, so.
Well, I was gonna raise that, but I can bring it up when we talk about the Allenbrook Bridge, so.
Okay.
It's okay. Okay.
Cool. I do wanna close out the ask that we had for Laura last week. So, the next item on the agenda is the Vermont Master Naturalist Funding Program. Speaking of staff memos, Emily, in her, great, capacity, wrote a really nice memo summarizing where we're at for this request. But I would sort of invite Laura to just give us all the debrief on where we're at and what you think the ask is at this point.
Okay, so, Alicia, Daniels, things came together. There's a person that took the Williston, Vermont Master Naturalist training. Gino Desiraggio, and he wrote actually for his project, the invasive plan for Mud Pond Country Park with a couple people from the Field Naturalist program.
It's an invasive management plan, not an invasive plan.
Did I say invasive plan?
Yeah.
Basic planting plan.
Invasive. Yeah, and so he said he would be willing to run a training, and Alicia already had one in Huntington that she had planned. And Richmond had been asking her, can we have another one here? She said, well, maybe we should just add Huntington and Williston. So it was too late to be able to put any funds in a budget for that. So we were wondering how we could do that, and it turns out, well, we didn't ask for it, so it's not there, and what we can do is see what's left over in FY, I think it's 26,
Six.
yeah. So
It
that's,
starts this July, it runs for through next
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
so that's what we'll do.
The part of the memo that I noticed was that if you wanted to do this concentrated program, putting that budget request in this summer for the fiscal year 27 would sort of be the easiest glide path,
Mhm.
because as town staff is building the budget that goes to Eric
Mhm.
Wells, the sooner that comes in as part of like, if we can vote on that in our July meeting and
Right.
just say, we would like to see this in the budget. And that's something that they have in their pocket from the beginning.
Yeah, I'll talk to Alicia about that possibility.
Yeah,
And the trade-off is waiting a year to run the
Right.
program,
Yeah.
which has its own factors.
Mhm.
But we
But
also talked about splitting it among a couple of years too,
Yeah,
right?
that's-
that was a no.
that's-
that was an.
No, that doesn't,
Yeah.
That's not gonna work, yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
It has to be in the year. The money has to be taken out in the year that the main part of the
So,
project.
but if she started like this September, couldn't we take some of it out of the 2026 budget and then some out of 2020, because she'll do the work over 2 years maybe? Is that, or is it all gonna be done in 1 year?
According to Matt, yeah,
Okay,
It really should be done in 1 year,
yeah.
okay.
in terms of the funding.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That makes it a little harder,
It
because that's a
does.
bigger
Program
chunk
does.
that we haven't
Yeah.
planned for.
And the program should be at least mostly in that year, like if it trails over, but
Right.
it shouldn't be like, oh, we held one date out of 8 during the fiscal year.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I know some grants do allow that, so
Yeah.
I do
Yeah.
hear you on that. But it seemed like based on the municipal budgeting, that was a no-go. But Laura, what do you make of if there's funding left over in fiscal year 26? It seems like there's not gonna be anything left over.
Yeah, I don't, yeah,
and
that's
it
the
would have to
thing.
be what, $3,500 minimum in that year
Right.
left over.
You know, Alicia's a great person and she's, you know, she never turns anybody away from these trainings, and she also, you know, thinks it's important for towns to have them, so if the money doesn't come through, I think she sometimes just has said, you know, it's okay. So. I'll
That's what I
talk to
was
her about
wondering,
that.
is whether, how concerned she was about starting something, not knowing if the money was coming.
Right, I mean, it's a business for her, so she pays everybody else, but just doesn't get paid.
Yeah.
She might have to take that, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I for one would welcome a budget, now knowing sort of what is on the table and the sort of uniqueness of having a Vermont Master Naturals focused in this community.
Mhm.
I think it sounds super cool rather than like having it, you know, bringing it in. I don't know, I think we should. And there's clearly interest on the committee, so I would welcome the budget proposal for fiscal year 27.
So how does
Get
that,
it out
I
there.
just had a quick question, because it sounds like we're doing it with Richmond and Huntington too. How does that timing fit in with the $10,000 necessary for
Yeah.
all three
Yeah,
towns?
that's the thing, yeah.
Would it delay it for them
Well,
as well? or-
All of the towns should have the same funding cycle because
Mhm.
they're all on the same fiscal calendar.
That's true, but for example, Richmond are approved. They have an extra fund that they take money out of if they need it.
What?
And they already approved.
An extra fund. We want one of those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's put that on the ballot for next year.
Yeah.
Ballot item Article 7, extra fund.
Conservation slush fund?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, like a
that's what it
conservation
is.
management fund or something that,
Yeah.
like, is a savings account.
Well,
for-
that is actually what Eric Wells kind of was talking that Eric and I about when we met him in the fall was the difference between what the operational costs and capital budget costs and basically like that was the direction that he thought he wanted to take the select board, was basically having a tax rate for a capital budget that they could sort of keep in reserve for buying things like trucks and, you know,
Mhm.
probably not a project like this, but.
We were, yeah, based, what I remember from that conversation, which your memory is a lot better than mine, but, I think he saw our, ERF ballot thing as an experiment.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And now that it was successful, I'm curious to see if we see other things like that going on to the town meeting day ballot.
So along that line, I know this is digressing a little bit, but how does that play into next year in our request to ERF? Are we gonna have to do that all over again, or will they look at it and say, hey, 75+% of the town voted in favor of this? We should do it, we should not have to go through that every year if everybody wants it.
That is a huge question.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll say what I haven't changed my thought on it, but. The tax rate that they are gonna calculate in that office down the road is gonna include that half penny on the tax rate. It's not gonna be a line item on your tax that says, this is what you owe the town assessor, and this is what you owe the schools, and this is what you owe for the ERF. It's gonna be, here's your bill.
Yeah.
So that rate is gonna be passed on to everyone inclusive, and you're not gonna have a line item on your bill like the energy efficiency charge does in my line of work.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it could just be continued, and then your tax rate basically won't change as a result of it. It's advantageous for us to potentially put it out to ballot though, because a half penny on the tax rate of the fiscal year 27 tax base will actually be higher than if they just give us a flat budget and say it's already.
As the grand list grows,
It's
our
a-
portion of.
On the
money
other
grows.
hand, it's a fair amount of work that we could put into something else
Totally.
more valuable. that,
Absolutely.
You know, that advances the town,
Yeah.
rather than every year having to stop for our thinking on other things for a month or so to make sure we rally the troops to vote on.
But if we have a comprehensive fiscal year 27 budget proposal that includes a master naturalist, trail counters, you know, a volunteer trail crew and, you know, the rogue hose that they need to sort of, you know, that if we have a comprehensive budget proposal, then this could be part of that. And it could be part of like, and the ERF funding mechanism is sort of, you know, goes part in, you know, is just a complementary piece to it.
So for today's question,
Yes.
For today's question.
Back to reality.
Well done, Eric.
The former chair, bringing it around
yeah.
for today's
I guess
question.
my question is, I can zoom in, but I can't. That budget, do we have the money
No.
for, we have the $3,500, it's just allocated for trails or something?
I don't think you have it.
No, it's just
Alright.
hasn't been allocated for it, so we don't have it.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so
the
we
best
don't
we
really
can
have.
expect is next
Choice then.
budget.
No, we don't, and we don't have anything to vote on, and we don't have any further recommendations as I sort of read
Right.
that memo.
Mhm.
It's just an update on that agenda.
Mhm.
Well, the
So-
WCC should make a advisory recommendation to the planning director
Right.
for fiscal year 27.
So the question, now I see reminded of the question at the bottom here, so I'm not hearing anyone oppose the idea. All right,
For fiscal year 27, I think it's a no-brainer.
yeah,
Now, the question will be if it's decided to move forward with fiscal year 26 program, because the other towns are already in
Right.
and whatever. Then we will have to make a decision, at the end of the fiscal year, if there's any money remaining in our budget for for
yeah,
conservation
which
things,
does happen.
which does happen. We don't typically
don't
go
spend
over,
much on
we typically are under,
conservation.
but we'll be under by 3,500. We have no idea. So,
Mhm.
But the action item that Emily writes in the memo is that it's an advisory recommendation to the planning director for the fiscal year 2027 budget. As to one, funding the program, and if so, two, the recommended dollar amount. And so I would posit to this group that we don't need to make that recommendation today. Because we don't have a proposal for fiscal year 2027,
Mhm.
right?
Right,
Okay,
And I think that's a question is which Gary was alluding to, you know, if you run this in 27, is it a Williston specific program, which case the cost might be higher, or is it again a shared program between
Right.
multiple
right.
towns, whereas the cost might be as described here?
We would need a proposal from,
again, yeah, okay. Mhm.
So it sounds like we're just, the idea here is to just table until July.
And remember to put that in.
Yeah. and I think more specifically, like, you know, the feedback to, I'm sorry, what's her name?
Alicia.
Alicia, the feedback is that. You can try coming back later for 26 to see if we have any money left,
Mhm.
but the better bet is to come back in 4 months. With a fiscal year 2027 budget,
Yeah.
which we would be very amenable to reviewing and recommending to the planning director for.
Yeah.
If it's feasible for the
Mhm.
organization to sort of do it in that timeframe.
Mhm.
But in theory, it's asking for our normal budget plus another
Mhm.
$3,500,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
It's to include this as additional.
Mhm.
And just as an aside, this is gonna remind me to follow up on the email that you sent to me for Alicia for basic program funding.
go.
Cause I completely forgot about it.
Okay,
I have one more question.
Yeah.
I have no idea about this. So the Vermont Master Naturalist Program is not a nonprofit. But if people donated to the Wilson Conservation Commission, like scholarship money for a program, is that tax deductible? Can it come out of the donor advised fund, or do you know?
For if, I saw Vermont Master Naturalist is an LLC, so that would not be an eligible.
Laura's asking if people donate to the town,
Right,
and then the
Oh,
town.
sorry, it's that.
Toward a scholarship fund.
Right.
For Vermont Master Naturalist. Yeah, I don't think donations to the town are tax deductible either. Is my guess, but
municipalities or.
Yeah,
they're not
so
talking
even
about
if you like
fees.
donate to ERF or something, it wouldn't be tax deductible. I don't know, I'm just,
Yeah, that's
People
something
have
we
done that
should
before.
know.
yeah, I know, I just don't know the tax consequences.
Well, our finance director would know,
Yeah.
Okay,
so, yeah, surely
Nice to
would know.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question.
Cause people can donate to the ERF fund. I've never heard of somebody donating to a scholarship fund for the town to pay for programming, so,
yeah,
yeah.
Okay, we'll leave you that one question.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can't.
Yeah, Shirley would probably be their best person
Okay.
to answer that.
Shirley's the tax.
She's the
Financial.
finance director, so if she doesn't know the answer, she'll
She's really
have
good.
somebody who will,
Mhm.
yeah.
She's happy to help.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, pretty light agenda today, because we don't have any formal requests.
I don't know that this list is light.
Well, fair.
Yeah.
We've got, items that were mentioned in, over the last few months as far as, topics that we want to work on. I would actually add to that, we generally have a pretty short fuse at this point, but Green Up Day, was not on that list. We always come up with something for Green Up
I
Day.
think it's in other businesses, town plan agreement.
Yeah. It is. So we've got Allenbrook Bridge update, Jacob Krantz. Winooski Valley Park District. Why is that a separate thing? Not quite sure.
Yeah, it's gonna be like a sub bullet of Jacob Grants.
It may be, WPD has in the past contracted to post. Town lands. And I think that is coming up. I'm plugging into a number of these projects right now, so I've just, I'll be having a conversation with Tim at WPD and the 11th, or after the 11th about. What that's about, and also Jacob Krantz.
Okay, so I guess a question for the commissioners with Dave here. How should we take this? Do we want to go line by line and just kind of give a little bit of an update as like what this is all about? Dave, do you feel like that would be helpful for you or?
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear it from your perspective, because I hear from Matt about kind of the planning and zoning, the town perspective on each of these projects, and it'd be great to get kind of your take in terms of, what each of these projects has kind of meant for your workload and your engagement and what your kind of hopes and dreams are.
Got it. So then let's do that. Let's start with the Allenbrook Bridge update and Reed, I know this one is another passion project for you, isn't it? Yeah. Well, it's your backyard.
I think this is more of an Eric thing.
Okay.
Allenbrook Bridge,
Yeah,
why is this an Eric thing?
I don't know, because he suggested it was my thing.
I mean, I don't know that it's an Eric thing, but my
It's
thoughts
all-
are, it would be very good to get that thing
Yeah.
rebuilt.
I think all of us have been peppered with questions by community members about when is the bridge gonna reopen and concerns about people who are still using it despite the fact that they could literally fall through into the brook.
Yeah, and it's a good, if nothing else, it's a good way to learn that, yes, that bridge sees a lot of traffic, because we get a lot of feedback about it when it's closed.
And it is in a part of the stream that seems very susceptible to
There's a lot of movement there.
flooding,
Yeah.
beaver activity,
Erosion.
erosion. Doing it in a climate resilience way, it, may be impossible. Like, it may just be a bridge that washes out and needs to be rebuilt every time, there's a July thunderstorm.
Oh, yeah, yes, there's, like, here's what I recall about it, because it's been a while since we talked about it, was that there were sort of two things we talked about doing. One was, how do we get it operational? And that was what, the capital budget request that we ended up making was for that piece of it, was just, we just need enough money to stabilize it so that people can use it again.
Yeah.
Then there's a second thing that we talked about doing, but did not ask for money for, and that is to do like a resiliency study to say like, how do you build this so that we aren't here again in 5 years when another flood happens or the beavers return and build the dam back or.
Yeah.
So, That part is still TBD, but in the short term, we just need to make it safe and passable.
Yeah.
Is the goal.
But aren't there some estimates of the cost of that engineering study or whatever, or do
Yeah.
we even have?
Andrew got like rough estimates around like doing the larger resiliency study, just like rough order of magnitude, but not like a specific
Okay.
proposal
Yeah,
to repair it. It was like engineering.
and if you remember, it was all part of the, like, there's free money from
Yeah,
ARPA,
Yeah,
and then we made a recommendation and.
Yeah, how to use that.
How to use it, yeah.
Oh, I thought we saw the engineering plan, so this is my recollection. We saw the engineering plan, it cost the town $17,000 to do. And we said, is that enough? Should we go ahead with this? And we said, yes, so
that's what
I
you
think
remember.
that-
I was
that-
trying to remember
Yeah.
what this
I
current
think that
state
they
was.
are, I think, going to go ahead with that whenever they can schedule it.
So I think the question, David, is.
What do we have?
Is this budgeted for any improvement and repair at this point? Because this commission gets asked that question a lot, because it is a nature trail off of this town school. So a lot of family, kids, teachers, et cetera, wanna use it, and so we, just for our awareness, like, is it scheduled? Is it budgeted? Those kinds of like basic questions. Larger questions in this general area is that it is extensive beaver activity. If you follow that trail all the way out, it's totally flooded because,
Yeah.
because of beaver
Yes.
activity.
In the nature trail segment that goes north, yeah.
Right. So there's a connectivity issue going on as well, which is that northern stretch of the trail cannot get down into the lower stretch of the trail. The bridge never actually flooded from beaver activity though, did it?
I think it was destabilized.
And like
the
undermining
posts
it?
were
Yeah.
destabilized.
The main water flow was dammed,
Right.
and then the water came toward us from where we are here, like toward the observation deck. Came around toward the observation deck and it washed out the supports at the edge of the observation deck and the first portion of the bridge.
See, people blame beavers for that, but water is a
And it was a flood,
beast.
Yeah, that's partially due to December flooding.
yeah.
Yeah, some of it was just high flows and some of it was
Yeah.
the beavers caused the high flows to go places they
Go
hadn't
around,
gone before, yeah.
Yeah.
Beavers just being beavers.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying the beavers are at
No,
fault,
yeah.
I'm just saying like they changed the way the water was flowing.
Yeah, so I think there is a revolution happening gradually in terms of people's general understanding of what a river is. In that, in the past, it'd be,
It's not
okay,
stagnant.
there's the current channel, let's put the pylons here and here and we're good. When in actuality, this whole floodplain area is the river
Right,
and
Yeah.
it's gonna shift over time, and
Yeah.
so that needs to be designed accordingly.
The right design for this bridge is like a massive arching bridge that just spans from like the top of the floodplain to the next.
Yeah.
And that's,
$49 million.
it's like, but because it's a nature trail, it actually goes down into the actual
Which has
river
value
channel
too, I
itself.
mean,
Yeah.
as an observation service, it's
Absolutely.
amazing that like classes go out there all the time from WCS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
a lot
But
of,
as a result, it's gonna flood, it's gonna wash away, like that's how it's gonna be.
so I was down there last night and saw the beaver down by the, the trail that connects the neighborhood.
Mhm.
And of course, that bridge is down at the level of the water. And
Yeah.
that's not gonna last, but anyway,
The one up north, up in there.
Up by,
There's like 3 bridges in there now.
Oh, there are? This is the one, if you go around the bike path, it's the one just past.
Oh, that
the
one.
loop
Oh, yeah.
over to the neighborhood, I don't know what.
Connects over
yeah,
the
old,
your
old
Southfield. Southfield.
Anyway, but there was a lot of flurry of talk on Front Porch Forum, I don't know if you saw it, about where'd the beavers go? And people from other towns, like the Sabina Ernst from Jericho, I was walking by the beavers, what happened to the dam? People are like freaking out. And they're talking about what they see there, the otters, the mink that are there now, and they're very excited about it, so it's like our own little
That's cool.
yeah,
area that people actually go to from
people are
other
flocking
towns.
to see.
They're flocking to see the beavers.
Yeah, and the nature that comes with them.
All right, we could talk about beavers all day.
Yeah, that's it. So let
That's
me
true.
just summarize what I'm hearing back. It sounds like it'd be really helpful for all of you to have a sense of where they are with the engineering. And whether this is something that can be scheduled as, for this field season in terms, okay,
We
so
need, we need to at least have an update for the community.
yeah,
Update, yeah.
yeah,
Because Some
okay.
people are gonna wanna use it like crazy.
And
For sure.
if there isn't a plan, it'd be nice to somehow.
Yeah.
Have a plan for how to approach it.
Right, okay,
At least
that sounds good.
plan for
I'll-
plan.
Yeah, I will jump on this. I know that there has been ongoing engineering work, and I think Matt was talking about it'd be great to get the engineers in here. Potentially
Yeah,
talk about
that'd be
what they've been doing
Cool.
Mhm.
sooner rather than later. And I know Timber and Stone was approached about the building project, and so I'll follow up with Josh to see if, depending on how this is going, that's something that still could potentially be accomplished this
Mm.
field season.
And I remember, David, what I was gonna say, which is, there's the Beaver documentary is being shown.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw it.
Yes,
It's
this weekend, right?
This weekend,
Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know if you're gonna be able to be there, but it's, I hope it's gonna be a really cool conversation. With Jim Heltz, the filmmaker. Noon to 1.
Noon to one
Noon to
at
one
the,
Saturday.
You know, there's like a huge.
At the
There's
library.
huge
Yeah, the
protests,
library.
yeah, going on in various cities.
Over the
around-
beaver thing?
No, 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 the beavers are on protest, no, it's there's a hands-off protest thing, yeah, so that's also happening on Saturday, but yeah, at noon to 1 at Gamble. Is the showing and a conversation with Jim Heltz, and it is essentially the grand reveal, this is the first time he's showing the film.
yeah,
Yeah.
Great.
So I do want to talk about Jacob Krantz. Jacob Krantz is a big one. Potentially Williston's newest park. And it's currently, the sort of background on this, as I understand it, is that the town was gifted this land. In a deed-like fashion, someone who's sort of didn't want it, didn't need it, and sort of knew that it had some future recreational value, but is fully landlocked with private land all around it. And so getting access to this land was a long story. And basically I'll just, cut to the chase. Global Foundries came in with a solar permit and in an adjacent field, and I and the commissioners sort of made this recommendation that like, hey, if you're looking for a solar panel, can you also talk to us about a trail easement going through the land? And we went out and walked the access road with Global Foundries and found that it was like a perfect walking trail out to the Jacob Krantz
Mhm.
parcel. And so that's where the lawyers in this discussion are really sort of focused on, is like, what is the deeded right to the town that Global Foundries is willing to give the town of Williston as far as access, so that
Okay.
we can access our property. So no one's talking about using Global Foundries property as like part of the park. Like
Mhm.
that's not what's being discussed. It's just the trail easement so that people can park their cars off of Mountain View Road at the existing parking lot, put up a gate to prevent people from driving the access road, and then allowing people to walk and run and bring their dogs.
Trail run.
Trail run.
Mhm.
It's a great trail run, down that road. We've gone on at least 2 walks now, and then one was a publicly noticed walk, which was super fun. Reed and I were there, Laura was
Mhm.
there. And beautiful, beautiful piece of property. And just last week, we got an email from Tim at Winooski Valley Parks District that said GMP is willing to give us access to the very,
It's like a landing, almost like a flat area.
yeah, it's like a
Oh,
spit
cool.
in the river, basically. It's like a sandbar. And so they're gonna give us access as long as there's no development, and that there's signage that basically says it's like, this is, how they have that GMP labeled park sign down by the canoe launch.
Yeah.
And the dam
Mhm.
walk. I think they want something similar to that.
You're now entering GMP property,
Right.
please follow these rules, kind of thing.
And give us credit for.
And give us
giving you
credit.
access. Yeah. Which is what GMP is always interested in.
Which is appropriate too, I mean, that's their land and it's a primo spot, so,
You're also paying for it through your rates.
yes. I thought you weren't here to talk about energy
Much of Williston is on Vermont Electric Co-op as opposed to GMP. Does anybody have any idea?
I know it's split, but I don't know what the split is.
Yeah, I think.
It's more the urban.
Yeah, I think
yeah.
VEC has like the across the way, across the highway.
So
Yeah,
on the
we're-
south side
we
of
have
the
VEC.
interstate, yeah,
South.
we're on Vermont Electric Co-op
Mhm.
too, yeah,
Oh, you are?
yeah. The rates are higher,
Oh,
and the rebates are worse. In terms of like buying an EV or something like that.
So what we are asking Winooski Valley Parks District to do on a regular basis is to just keep, because this is like on the lawyer's end of trying to like get the deal finalized. And so we are constantly on the bottom of the list for, not for the Winooski Valley Parks District. I think they would love to see this move forward, but their lawyer is part-time. I think he even does it as like a pro bono service for them. And obviously Global Foundries has.
Large corporation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're,
Multiple lawyers working on this.
Cover their butt. Yeah.
so it's a little bit of a David and Goliath kind of situation where like, you know, we're very happy that they're entertaining this idea. It's our best lead in over 10 years, I think, for getting access to this property. But it's really slow. And so our only strategy is to just ask for continued updates so that it's constantly on their mind.
Great, thank you.
Would it be, hearing that, would it be, and remembering, would it be better, so we've been inviting Winooski Valley Park District back every other month or something. Would it be better
To invite
to invite
Global Foundry.
Global Foundries,
Right.
but them on the,
I mean, we could have, we could force the topic by having another walk. Like, that's usually the best way to get Global Foundries to show up. Is that, Tim can work with that operations director and we can get him on the land and like walking it again. And, you know, asking them to show up to give us the legal update. That would
with
be,
the new conservation planner, perfect excuse.
could be.
Did they show up at the last one?
Oh, yeah.
They hosted it.
They have to.
Welcomed everybody.
It's their land that we're walking through, and so they're very active in the walk, pointing out like, this is where we wanna put our solar panels, this is the access road. But then as soon as you get to like the Jacob Krantz parcel, they
Peel off.
don't peel off, but they
Listen.
quiet up, like, you know, they know that like, that's not their thing anymore, and so. But it's, you can tell the difference that like, okay, they're no longer on guard.
There's an invasive walk planned also, isn't there?
They were,
We
the
want-
one was proposed by
Okay.
Vermont, by Winooski Valley Park District, like, hey, one of the ways we can engage the public is to do an invasive walk. Spring isn't a perfect time to do.
That's
that.
true.
Yeah,
So
so,
spotting buckthorn,
Well, yeah,
And pulling it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, we did wanna do that.
very therapeutic.
I think we just thought about doing that
it's a wee
for
wrench.
a green up day event.
Or we can damn wrench. Sorry.
That's coming up.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's coming up. Town volunteer policy status. Eric wants to volunteer. So that's the 411 on that.
Yeah, okay,
Is-
great.
is We wanna see it move forward. We want access. We got a little bit overexcited that maybe this was gonna move faster than it was, in the fall. And there was a small story on it in the Observer, if you wanna pull it up, and also the naming convention is gonna be a thing when and if we get to that point. Because nobody wants to call it the Krantz Park. We wanna call it something else. My vote is Big Bend, but you know, that's good. The whole,
People are gonna show up
Careful, you
here
end
to
up with a
see a
national
giant.
guard in the wrong spot.
yeah, that's true. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that, that's great.
Yeah, so let's talk about the volunteer policy status update. I think this is a Chapin identified issue for us,
Mm-hmm.
that basically the town has a bunch of invasives. He would like to have nothing more than a very active volunteer posse of invasive warriors. And the problem is that there's a lot of restrictions on the town volunteer model. And you know a lot more about that than I do.
Yeah, and it's not just invasive removal, it's also planting and maintaining
Yeah.
plantings and riparian zones. It could be trail maintenance, volunteer trail maintenance, you know, hey, the group's gonna get together and walk this trail and they're gonna look for invasives, but they're also going to, you know, carry some basic tools and touch up water bars or whatever projects the town could benefit from that volunteers could do. As I understand it, the reason I brought this up to the Conservation Commission is because a lot of the work that the group wants to do would be under the oversight of the Conservation Planner and the Conservation Commission in terms of approving the general project, to say, yes, like that work is work that would be beneficial to the town, so therefore volunteers are approved to do that under proper waivers and such. And that we, right now, the two main challenges are that projects have to be pre-approved, and that which takes so the waiver has to be filled out with the pre-approved project by a staff member. And 48 hours is, I can't think, the current SLA to, like, so if Chapin has volunteers who say, hey, I can do something on Thursday this week. He probably can't do it because he's got to get it to town staff has to draft all the waivers then have to be signed by each person. There's not like a single waiver that everybody signs, it's like each person has a separate document that has to be created by a staff member. So that's a bit tricky, and then the second piece, which has been limiting volunteer efforts, is that minors are not, the town manager's response in terms of policy has been that minors are not covered, even if they're with their adult, even if their adult signs on their behalf, minors cannot be there doing anything. And so what happens is you have parents,
like school projects.
so on school projects, as long as the school staff member is there, the school's insurance covers that. So that's why he's been focused so much on school stuff, because he can do it under school insurance. But he doesn't want to be doing it that way. He wants to be able to just say, hey, any community member who wants to help us remove invasives, water some riparian plantings, put protection around them, whatever. He wants to be able to do that. And right now what's happening is it's not just that youth are not volunteering, but their parents can't volunteer because they have to find childcare because their child can't be there. So it's like, it's just a huge sticky situation. So essentially we have no volunteering going on except for through the schools
And scouts.
and scouts, because scouts has their own insurance. But beyond that, it's basically on hold. It has been for the last few years.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, well, yeah, thanks for that, and I think this is one of those opportunities where there's a benefit of being new, cause I can, plop myself down and say, explain this to me, let's talk it through, is there anything I can do to move the needle on this? And inject some fresh energy into that conversation,
I
so,
believe a petition is being put together.
Okay.
By Chapin. I advised him, because he asked me, what should I do? And I said, well, the Conservation Commission discussed it. We're generally supportive. Yeah, we want volunteers. Yeah, we need to find a way for people to be able to help us, because our list of goals I assume you've started to read the new town plan draft.
yeah,
There's a lot of goals in there about invasives and engaging the community. Those are probably gonna be unachievable under the current situation with the insurance policy, and waiver policy, so we're gonna need the help with that. And so I suggested to Chapin, I said, I think you need to go to the select board and ask for time to present to the select board and say, this is the situation, this is the blockage that we have, what can we do? I don't know the solution, you tell me, what are the solutions we could do to get through this? Do we need new insurance coverage? Maybe our current insurance isn't good enough, do we need?
So other towns must have
Other
the same
towns-
issues.
Other towns allow it under there, so.
Oh, they do?
Yes.
I thought most of the towns got their insurance through Vermont League of Cities and Towns, but maybe they have policies anyway. Anyway,
Yeah, anyway, so I just suggested you need to ask for time in the select board. He did, it hasn't been scheduled, and so now he's, I think, starting a petition to force the issue.
Okay.
Very good. And there's no shortage of invasive volunteer needs.
That's true.
Well, as you know, Dave, it like if you don't get it early, you might as well not do the work. It's like,
Yeah.
it's either early or nothing on the invasive stuff. So Chapin's feeling the urgency. He's like, wow, we got
Yeah.
to do this now, not next year or in 2 years.
yeah, understand that. Something to consider for the future is thinking about putting together a prioritization in terms of control sites. Because that's one of the most challenging things I've seen is just burn out on basic projects if you're trying to put out all the fires without a larger plan of which areas are the most important to work on. By the time you circle back to point A, everything's back and you're kind of nowhere. Whereas we know that there are going to be places in town that are much more important to manage. And the best way to manage, no matter what your techniques are, is to come back every single year. And that requires, long range planning and tracking of sites,
Budgeting.
volunteer power, et cetera. So
Yeah.
that might be something that we can do, get it started on in the interim while kind of waiting for the volunteer log jam to clear is have a
Have a
really
clear
concrete,
prioritization.
prioritization and plan. For, sites that have already been worked on in the past that are important or sites that you'd like to start working on.
We started a couple of years ago, I don't remember when, maybe others know, we started including invasive management as like a chapter or a section in management plans for different conservation areas or country parks. And so we have it at like a information, not as like prioritization, but information at a conservation area level.
Yeah,
But we definitely don't have the prioritization, and especially across all of our parcels.
Or the public land where you would, or wanna focus that level of effort. There's a lot of public land that isn't
Or a park or a conservation.
conservation.
okay.
Okay, so the Vermont Association of Conservation Commission membership update, that's an easy one. It was $85. Matt paid it. We're now members.
Awesome, that's it.
I thought it was
Easiest
gonna be-
ask I've ever had.
That was amazing.
I thought it was gonna be who was gonna attend meetings on our behalf.
Oh, boy.
We haven't.
We've been members in the past.
We have, I got an email from them, I don't know, a week or two ago, and they said, hey, just so you know.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, your membership expired in July of 23.
Right.
Oh,
So I remember
that was
giving.
probably
a
on me,
talk.
I was the chair.
Yeah, they had annual meetings and I remember giving a talk and
Yes.
attending a few times, like, I don't
Yeah.
know, 15 years, 20 years ago, who knows?
Annual meetings would be okay.
Yeah, they're.
Yeah,
they were
that's-
pretty good.
That's what they do this big annual meeting, usually in September or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
At that time, it was just dramatically different, like the resources and the time and the effort we had put in compared to almost everybody else. Of course, again, it was a while ago, but we were just way ahead of them, but we were able to help others. Here's where we're at, here's, that kind of thing.
I almost wonder if they do have an annual meeting, if bringing our ERF campaign to that group would be
Yeah,
an
you
interesting
can tell them
subject.
about what we've done and.
Exactly.
Because it has been pretty successful.
Because that Shelburne committee that came to talk to us last year,
That's right, yeah.
and they seem to sort of struggle with that whole tax rate topic and like, what's the right amount to ask for?
Yeah, that's great. Are you, any of you on their listserv as well?
I'm not.
I am,
I think
they send a lot of emails. out.
Yeah.
Sometimes if there's a certain subject, you get like 20 emails.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of my state soapbox, but we really, we're strongly supportive of VACC as a way to engage folks beyond town boundaries. And I think even to your point, Gary, of like, you're pretty well resourced here in Williston, but you have the opportunity to be a leader in transferring that knowledge to areas where people are less experienced or less resourced. And yeah, even writing up a success story on what this ERF process was like for you, the work that you put into it, and sending that to AVCC. They love to feature that kind of stuff, and then people can read it who are thinking about going through something similar and reach out to you for advice on kind of what went down and how it worked in Williston.
It does feel like if we're playing membership dues, we should try to engage, so we're getting something out of it.
$85.
I mean, it's $85, but even if it's just making sure that we attend somebody from us
Right.
attends the annual
Right.
meeting.
You're on their list, you will,
Yep.
great.
Yeah.
All right,
I'm happy to stay off that list. I have a lot of emails.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
I don't read more emails than I read.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other big topics that we wanna flag for Dave? Yeah.
One that came up through well, I think it would be useful once the drafts are all finalized of the town plan. and it is transmitted to the select board, I do think it would be useful to get a head start as a commission to like sit down and look at, okay, what was the final language?
Mhm.
And which were those short-term items?
It's on the agenda.
What is on the agenda?
That's next.
Oh, okay, never mind. All right.
Perfect.
Well,
Any
so-
other big conservation topic not related to the town
Okay.
plan?
Not, probably not, I don't know how big of a conservation topic it is, but, I guess we look to, do we have any, so one of the projects we've been working on is with a CBU, a group of students.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's true.
And that's about the most I can say intelligently about it off the top of my head, but. Reed's
Yeah, so it should be.
Been driving that one.
Yeah, we have a group of teachers at CBU. Who have worked with their students to consider some projects to meet our Williston goals. And one of the ones that they decided to take up, I think the only one so far they've decided to take up, is to do this rural landowner interviews and outreach. They're mostly interviews at this point. It's mostly a listening tour. So basically, students from a few classes are going around. We provided a list of recommended landowners in Williston. Some of them are more like land stewards, meaning maybe they don't actually own a bunch of rural land, but they help other people in the community steward their land. And some people own land and are not necessarily wouldn't necessarily be considered land stewards. That they're not actively managing their land per se.
Mhm.
And they're just interviewing them about their experiences as a rural landowner. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? What do you love about it? What is unique about your land? What do you think about the future of conservation opportunities for your land? And I believe they have largely completed those interviews and they're now in the write-up phase. I only know, I have not been getting regular updates from them. I only know because Chapin was on the list and a student and a staff person came and walked locally here with them. So,
Oh, that's great.
so I saw it in action, one day and then they said, oh yeah, many of them are done. So I think they're in the write-up phase and we should be hearing back from them. I wrote up an expectation, kind of like an outline of the engagement for them, and I said, look at this list, do outreach, identify people that are ready to interview, do the interview, write it up, and then it needs to be in some sort of presentable format to us, whether that's a story map, whether that's an essay or a report or something. And these are some things that it should cover. So I think we're gonna get pretty good information back, but it's kind of a black box right now, it's waiting.
So we should anticipate that before the end of the school year.
Yeah.
That there will need to be a meeting probably devoted to hearing these, and it may, depending on the student schedule, may have to also sort of pivot to what
Yeah.
their availability.
It could be the students presenting it, or it could be a staff person from CVU bringing their reports to us on their behalf. I don't know what it will look like, but
Okay,
that's a good one, Eric. Thanks. for
Yeah.
bringing that up.
are we waiting for Matt for this next item on the agenda? Or has he given you enough information that you feel like you can?
Yeah, I think that's really a Matt one.
Okay.
I couldn't comment on the timeline or the process at this point on day 3, so.
Well, I guess, yeah, totally.
Should be back in a little bit.
We can definitely fill the time a little bit with what this commission has been doing, because I do feel like it's been a really big process for the town for the last 2 years. So we have put a lot of effort into it. I think generally the town uses all of its commissions to help develop and write these plans. And so, our background on this is that we reviewed the old plan. We made comments on each chapter saying, oh, we wish it would say a little bit more of this or a little.
Each chapter that applied to us.
Each chapter that applied to us, right? Exactly, thank you. And so we started at that level of feedback, going all the way back to like 2 years ago and taking comments on those old chapters. And then the town developed some outlines that we then further iterated on and ideated on. And then as recently as just 2 meetings ago, We broke down the current outline as it stands, with all of its very specific strategies, outcomes, goals, tasks, that whole breakdown that Matt's been leading that team with. And really kind of what felt more like a wordsmithing deep dive exercise was still sort of presented as a high level review, and sort of what I took to be like a red flag review, like, oh, what is this saying? And so we've been providing our review and information on this for the last several years, really. And I would invite any other commissioners to jump in on their perspectives on that, but I do know that sort of to this point is that it does need to be finished, I believe, this summer. Do I have that right?
Yeah, the target's July, I believe, to
Yeah.
publish it,
Right,
and so they obviously need time to warn it. Get through the select board and all that.
home stretch.
My understanding from Emily, and Emily just walked in, but from our last meeting was that. Our conversation on town plan last meeting was like the Conservation Commission's last opportunity to weigh in on it. We got,
Yeah.
there's opportunities for us as individual members of the town to contribute probably still, but Conservation Commission was, I think it's done.
Yeah. Agreed.
It's great to be a part of it. But it was a lot.
It was absolutely a lot, yeah. There's a document that I was trying to find, but I haven't found yet, that I wanted to share with you, because I'm not sure how well it got handed down, because as David mentioned, we've been doing this for a long time. So like, we've had 2 other conservation planners prior to you who also helped us through this process.
Andrew and Simon.
So you're the third, yeah, exactly. So
Exactly.
Simon did the initial, like, hey, let's look at the old chapters.
Yep.
And get like feedback.
Mhm.
And a document was created that had all of our comments about our wish list of what we would see more or less of. After looking at the old one, not even looking at the new one yet, just looking at the old one, what would we expect to be in a new town plan? And that there is a summary document that I thought was really good. I think in the end, all of it got addressed in the new version of the town plan. But just in case, it might be useful for you to look back and see like, okay, 2 years ago, when we were just looking at the old town plan, what was the Conservation Commission expecting to see in the new one? And it didn't seem to get handed down well to Andrew what we were doing the next phase, so I might pass it off to you if I find it, Dave.
That was a Simon document.
He has a Simon document about,
Okay, I'll see.
reactions to the old version of the town plan.
Okay, I'll see if I can find
And I think we can probably move on from this agenda if you don't have any updates, but I feel pretty confident based on the previous briefings that Matt and Emily gave us. Are there any other questions you guys want to cover? Anything?
No,
Okay. I wanted to raise for other business that the economy is slowing. And I have definitely noticed a downtick in applications coming through this committee, and I know that, for example, in Burlington, they went almost like almost a whole quarter last year without a single applicant in their DRBs. Yeah, and that was like a real sign that like, oh my God, what's coming for Burlington right now? That no one's proposing anything. And so it does kind of, but like in anticipation of the fact that we may not have a lot of those like project-based developments coming in, that having like a work plan for all of these things could be really helpful for us. And it would help us schedule our meetings, it's like, if we're trying to get to all of this and get through like 2 projects a meeting, that's when like, oh, that's a lot. That's when it gets really hard to do. But if we just have this scope of work that we've been talking about, and there's not any projects coming in, then that's gonna feel like we can take our time, we can schedule it, we can pace things out. We can also take more breaks if we need to, which I know in the summer's coming up, that has been nice in the past.
We could get out in the field too.
yeah, it would be nice.
Get out in the field
Have a
too.
couple of field walks.
That would be great. I think,
Yeah, I mentioned that to Dave yesterday, actually. It was like, at one point, we had tried to schedule some regular walks as a group so that we're not in this room all the time, like sometimes we're out seeing the land that we're trying to manage, and they were like, it just was tough
Yeah,
to keep it going.
and part of that is because you have to bring the landowners in and do the permit reviews and
Yeah.
and that, so like, yeah, that, I'd be open for that too. So upcoming meetings, I just wanted to sort of flag that, that's been on my mind as far as, you know, scheduling it and, how do people feel about that? I guess that was a great suggestion. Are there any thoughts about like the cadence of our meetings? Do we still want to generally, meet as needed or, I just think it's good to just sort of reaffirm so that we're having that discussion. It's not taken for granted that we're just gonna be here every other week. If there aren't many projects coming in, do we want to try and meet monthly, or do we want to continue on this work plan bi-weekly for the foreseeable future?
So personally, I think before we shift to maybe meeting less often, I think there's a couple of things we need to catch up on. I mean, I see the trail network as one that we haven't had the time to identify areas where we want to make connections and make those happen. And I also think, as we talked about earlier, is the whole priorities for conservation in town.
It's been
We need
5
to
years.
take another look and maybe a more proactive way of telling people what we have to offer and maybe make a couple things happen. Particularly related to, you know, a big, huge chunk of town, you know, valuing what we do in that area, if we need to get something done in that as well. So I guess I don't think we're ready, I'm not personally ready to slow down in how often we meet. I think it's a time when maybe catch up on other things.
I agree. I think, we have. Like there's I think especially looking at the short-term things that are in the new town plan. There's probably some things in there that we could start working on sooner than later. And if nothing else, we still have, that whole idea of a welcome package for a new conservation commission member.
Yeah.
Orientation
package.
Which is, you know, timely, since
Yeah.
we need to recruit another member.
Yeah, that's another thing, is that really hard to do? Are we having problems finding people? Is that what the case is?
I think we just rely on the town and sort of have that be a posted opening for a volunteer position.
I
Yeah.
posted in October on Front Porch Forum.
Yeah.
Sharing my experience and encouraging people to apply. Nobody contacted me.
Yeah, that's right.
However, at the ERF celebration, happy hour that Susan Williston held, somebody came to me, and said, I'm gonna apply. So I do think somebody's about to
Are we
apply.
just short of one person?
right.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think somebody's
Particularly a
about to
younger
apply.
person would be great.
It's Kim's departure or sort of temporary.
Younger than me, for sure, which is everybody.
Yeah, Kim's current inability to be here for meetings is just, it's just meant we look a little bit light, but Kim's coming back and I
Yeah.
think somebody's gonna apply, so I think we're gonna be okay. But there are other town, I mean, if you know people, the other town committees, there's like 7 openings, so,
Wow.
yeah.
I think it's great that you're considering onboarding documents. That's another thing that I was with my work this day constantly pushing CCs to have any procedure for it, because we see a lot of just inefficiency and turnover. And we also would hear a lot from, you know, brand new, especially younger folks who come on to conservation commissions and feel very overwhelmed about what's going on and not understanding the group norms that have naturally developed between people over 20 years. And we have seen some people kind of burn out because of that. So I think it's great to be proactive about, you know, getting people up to speed on your history and your norms, and also just treating any opportunity to bring someone new as a little bit of a group reset. An opportunity to kind of
Regrounding.
reground and reestablish some of those group norms.
It also could help for people considering to join too, like, sometimes the unknown is scarier than the known,
Yeah,
so
what do
being
you
able to
do?
say like, hey, if you were to join. This is the packet of information,
Yeah.
so if you wanna take a look at what they are, get a feel for what we do. You at least will understand like what maps do we use, what bylaws do we tend to enforce, like you could kind of pretty quickly get up. to
I would
speed.
like to market it as the field trip commission.
Okay. Yeah,
Well, that
So we have
acronym,
to-
it becomes the FTC, you better be
Yeah.
careful of that.
Wow.
More
You have
fun
to
than the
do field
DRB
trips.
though.
You have to do at least yearly field trips to make that.
Yes.
Now, do you have a 5-year plan or any document like that that kind of outlines your
It's the town plan,
goals?
the
for-
town plan,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's really, I think that,
Anything assigned to the conservation planner or the conservation commission. As like the responsible party in the town plan.
but I do think that like that is a good relationship with the town planner is bringing agendas to us. And, I know Eric, you did that when you were the chair and we had Simon, who was really like here for the long terms. And I think I could do that with you, Dave,
Yeah.
is really map out like what are the agenda topics that we want to cover on the sort of monthly, bi-weekly cadence that they need to in order to be addressed and meet the goals. It's like scheduling out things like budget discussions so that we can definitely get the memo in by November, like, if we had been late with the memo this year, like, it would have been impossible for us to have gotten that done, right? So it's like getting
It's
that,
pretty rushed already.
yeah, but like getting that memo in on time.
Took like 4 months as it was.
Yeah, so there are some sort of normal scheduling stuff that I think we can work on.
Yeah, there's like
Throughout the year.
seasonal activities and
Yeah.
then like the hot topics that are coming up.
Great. Yeah, I would, just kind of digesting our meeting today, I would hope that, I will be able to kind of take on some of that work of making it as easy and painless as possible for you to get through things like DRP, because I'd love for you to be able to spend more of your time on these long-term plans and getting out more in the field and that kind of stuff.
Great. That is the other thing too, is that I love the opportunity to weigh in on the agenda, just so that we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because sometimes I do have emails with singular other commissioners and we kind of talk, or we run into each other at the grocery store and we say, oh, this needs to be on the agenda. So, as just a point of, process moving forward, generally, if the planner will email me and CC the chair, who previously was Kim. Reed's kind of been stepping in informally. Thank you, Reed.
We're helping you out a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, some of
Keeping
that.
track of stuff.
When is Kim coming back? Does anyone actually know that yet?
I would guess, I don't know, I think she's gone just this semester,
Yeah,
so
maybe
Okay.
like, so, yeah.
depends.
Yeah, that sounds.
My
great.
guess is she'll be back by the
Yeah.
mid-May.
She's on a Fulbright?
Yeah.
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 So anyways, just emailing the agenda to me in advance, usually like on the Thursday or Friday before the meeting. And then just a quick turnaround of like, yes, that looks good, no, nothing to add, or no, something came up. We'd like to talk about this. And then the agenda usually then goes out to the committee members either that Friday afternoon or Monday. And then it gets put up on the website shortly thereafter. And then usually, just as a point of process, I use the website for the navigating the meeting itself. So like nothing that's on email is, everything basically needs to be publicly available.
Yes.
to navigate the meeting.
Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense, and it's all something Matt also recommended in terms of just working with you to get
Yeah.
agendas
Great.
together and try to get as much input in advance as possible, so
Sweet.
that makes
I
sense.
asked her, we'll see what she says. Expected return.
Cool. So we talked about board recruitment. That's a great update from Reed. Then we have town plan and green up day, May 3rd. My family generally just does green up day on our own. I was not planning to do anything in the town square. Was anyone else here gonna make themselves available? for
I
the-
can be available.
Yeah, okay.
Man, I'm not
Thank you,
here,
Laura.
I'm not here.
I could probably, if we're gonna have a table, I could probably do an hour or so on May 3rd. Oh, yeah, May 3rd.
I have the map of tables, they're already kind of set, so let me see what laying
Yeah.
down there, so I think there is a planned like joint table for committees and commissions, see what it says here. Okay, town committees, energy, housing, conservation, okay, so Conservation Commission is gonna share a table, if we would like it, with the Old Brick Church Committee.
Nice enough to share.
And
We're with energy.
So I have a,
Do we
while
have-
you're looking at that, Reed, can I talk briefly about
Please.
something we could do at the, even though I'm not gonna be there, which is, I'm sorry for, but. What if we had a printed out map of that trail network map that showed the, various places where we could make improvements?
Draw with a highlighter where you.
Yeah, like I think it just involves people, forces them to look at it, put a sticker on it, or do something where an area that you would value a better connection. Does that make
I think
sense?
that's cool. Because it's
Do we, I
like-
assume we have the ability to print those maps out here.
We have a
I
large
believe so,
scale
yeah, there's a large
Yeah.
scale.
Yeah.
We will be inside the main tent. We might be with energy, we might be with Old Brick Church, depending on which thing you believe in here. And I was gonna suggest that we probably should, if Eric and Laura, or I'm gonna be there, but I'm staffing another table.
Mhm.
If we're gonna have a table, I'm guessing we should be prepared to talk about the bridge situation, so between now and then, we probably should figure out what are our talking points, this is what happened last year, this is what we're doing right now, this is what to expect in the next year. So, cause that would be a great way to engage with people, I think. Even just to have like a picture out of the broken bridge, so that it prompts people to ask about it, like, oh yeah, what's going on with the bridge?
Dave, have you been asked to staff that?
I will not be here unfortunately,
Okay.
on May 3rd. So that's something I'll have to miss this year unfortunately, because I just didn't plan ahead for that.
Yeah, okay.
But
I'm just trying to figure out if there will be a conservation, like, if Emily's doing that, or if Laura and Eric wanna navigate it. I guess, that's, both of those are great ideas.
No May signs, we still have some,
Mhm.
Yeah,
and there's a sign up sheet, if people want to take one, we need to just know. And I don't know if Matt will be able to help you find that, Dave, but there's a sign up sheet for No May where we're keeping track of people who take a sign, just so we know what communities and how many people in those communities, they write down their street
Mhm.
and their name. Yeah,
I know that American Meadows, who I got my seeds from, also has like, promo seed packets for,
Yeah, didn't we have those
Yeah, we
last
had
year?
those,
Yeah,
Yeah,
and people can take
Sustainable
them.
Williston got them. right?
yeah, there were a ton of
Yeah.
them, yeah.
Yeah,
they
that's your
were
Sustainable
those
Williston
really
providing.
nice. Mhm.
That's another option. Thank you, saying thank you to having like a sign out that says thank you for supporting the ERF or something like that would probably be
Oh,
a
yeah.
nice thing to have at the table.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
Mhm.
yeah, I think like, the map idea, Gary, with the existing conserved areas. And the
Mhm.
existing,
Yeah.
Trails,
Yeah.
trails and desired connection.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
and
a
where we
great
have
idea.
easements, those kind of things, but.
yeah,
I think one of the new the new town plan draft maps is probably roughly that.
Yeah,
It's
I think
like-
it is too.
It has
The
some
one
of
with
that
those
on it.
trails on it.
okay.
Turned out of that people can mark on or put stickers on or something would be engaging.
Mhm.
Sounds like a table, yeah, we do need to wrap up, but maybe we can, in the next meeting, we can finalize table participation for the third. And I like these ideas that are coming, so let's just solidify the plans for next
Mhm.
time. And is there interest in me contacting American Meadows for those seed packets, or is there Sustainable Williston?
So Wilson is not doing that this year.
Okay.
We're doing a coloring activity. We were gonna do seed starting, but it's gonna be kind of late for that and there's other challenges. So we ended up deciding to do more of an art education activity at our station. The library is gonna have seeds available.
Mm.
Bonnie,
Okay.
at the library typically has been bringing seeds that people are welcome to take, and I don't know where they come from, but there's a lot of wildflower seeds and stuff.
Okay.
In there.
Fair enough. Great, then we'll adjourn for today. And Dave, I think you and I can probably connect sometime next week and work out like what the schedule is going forward.
yeah, that sounds great.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do in person or
Yeah.
go for a trail run.
Cool. I am local and I work from home, so I'm pretty
Okay.
flexible. Usually in the second half of the week is better.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, or we can simply just meet here. That's fine.
Grab one to go, Laura.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody want
Yeah.
another one of Laura's?
Really good.